Okay, welcome everybody. And first I want to thank everyone who's here, someone who was just a stalwart leader on this issue for years, with her persistence, her intelligence, and her passion. This, you can say for sure it wouldn't have happened if Kirsten Gillibrand hadn't taken the lead. I want to thank my colleague, Senator Graham. He really stepped up to the plate and understood how important this was, and as he said, convinced businesses that this is good for business as well. And that's why we're able to move this amazing legislation by a voice vote, which meant no one was opposed to it. And in part, that's good credit to Lindsey Graham and to Joni Ernst, who helped so much on this legislation as well. And of course, I want to thank Gretchen Carlson. She did an amazing, amazing thing. And as I mentioned to her, when something bad happens to you, very bad, the human instinct is to curse the darkness. But instead, she lit a candle. And it was her courage that brought us here today. So thank you very much, Gretchen. It is just so angering, just confoundly angering, to realize that people, mainly women, but some men too, who were abused, harassed sexually, were forced to shut up, not tell anyone about it, and not seek justice. That is almost medieval. But that's what was happening until today, because so many people, when they signed employment contracts, were forced into compulsory arbitration on this issue. We may have different views on compulsory arbitration on other issues, but on this issue, how could you tell a woman or man who was harassed, who was abused, you can't seek any public redress, you have to be quiet about it, you have to be handcuffed, and whatever it is. What's muzzled? Yeah, what's the thing they put? And muzzled, thank you, that you couldn't go forward. The great news is that'll never happen. And even better news, which a lot of people don't realize is in this bill, even the existing clauses that people have signed decades ago are no longer enforceable. So people who are harassed will get their rights and have their own choice and their own decisions to make as to whether to do this. So this is, if you could ever say any legislation was long overdue, this is it. This is it. It's sad it took the 22nd to the 21st, whatever century we're in. It took this century, 21st century, to make this happen. It should have happened long ago, but we're glad it's happened today. We're glad it's retroactive. And again, as I said, the person who made this happen more than just about anybody else is Senator Gillibrand. So let me recognize her.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Leader Schumer. I want to thank Leader Schumer first. The questions I got asked by the press a lot yesterday is, why did it take you so long to get this done? And leadership matters. This is something that Senator Schumer has a personal passion about. He's had it for a long time. I've heard his own stories of people he knows and loves and how they were harassed, sexually harassed and assaulted. He feels it intimately as a father of girls. And as a leader, he wanted to do this. This is something that Senator Graham and I have been working on for a long time. It was bipartisan. It had this vast support that we built up over many years. But this bill doesn't get done unless Senator Schumer puts it on the floor. The second thing that Senator Schumer did that I want people to know is, in the 11th hour of this negotiation, we had to bring all senators together. This was not something you could do easily, even if one senator stood opposed, because then the consent falls away. And he was able to meet with Senator Graham and Senator Ernst to really meet the needs of this moment and to assure everyone involved that this bill is what it says it is. And that was really important to Senator Ernst. And Senator Ernst and I have been a partner in this space for a long time. We work in the military context. But it was Senator Schumer, Leader Schumer's presence and commitment that this bill is what it says it is that made the difference for us to move forward and have this unanimous consent. So, Senator Schumer, thank you. This doesn't get done without you. It doesn't get done without your leadership. And it doesn't get done without this moment. I also want to thank Senator Graham because, Lindsey and I have been in this space together now for almost 13 years, 14 years. We've been working in the military sexual assault space. We're working now in these employment agreement space. And Lindsey comes at these issues as a lawyer, as a trial lawyer, as a man who's been in the midst of these issues for a very long time. And he has a very incisive view of injustice. He knows when something just isn't right, and he will stand against a mountain to tell people it isn't right. He has been working with the business community. We were able to get so many business leaders to support this legislation over the last 5 years because of his advocacy, because of his determination, and because of his commitment to this space. So I just want to thank you, Senator Graham, for leading this and never giving up. I want to recognize both Senator Durbin and Senator Grassley, who, as chairs and ranking members of the Judiciary Committee, they were the ones who brought this to the committee and called the vote and made sure that this was something that not only had the full support of the Judiciary Committee, but had their full support. And there are two no greater champions in the Senate than Senator Durbin and Senator Grassley on individual rights and justice. That's what they've made their careers about as leaders of the Judiciary Committee, and their support on this made the difference. And then last but definitely not least is Gretchen Carlson, who was the face and the voice of this advocacy. And I can tell you to put yourself out there to tell your story with all the restrictions that she had, because she had a non-disclosure agreement, but to tell her story and be the face of this important societal change takes more courage than any of us can imagine. It is literally putting your whole self, your whole body, your whole history, and your whole future in the hands of others, us here, to carry that story effectively. So Gretchen, your bravery, your courage, it matters, and thank you. So this is one of the most significant workplace reforms in American history. The bill is going to help fix a broken system that protects perpetrators and corporations and ends the days of silencing survivors. No longer will survivors of sexual assault or harassment in the workplace come forward and be told that they are legally forbidden to sue their employer because somewhere buried in their employment contracts was this forced arbitration clause. The Ending Forced Arbitration and Sexual Assault and Sexual Harassment Act will void all forced arbitration provisions for sexual assault and harassment, allowing them to have their day in court, a basic constitutional right, your day in court, to be heard and to aspire to justice. And that will be, going forward, their right. It will also allow them to discuss their cases publicly, to tell your story, to tell your colleagues, to tell your family, to tell the people you know and love what's happening, and it prevents corporations from protecting their harassers and abusers. The need for this reform was clear. The forced arbitration process has left survivors blocked from seeking information that could prove their case. This is about discovery. When you're in an arbitration, you don't get the same discovery rights than when you're in a trial. And when you're in a trial, that discovery gives you the facts of whether this is something that is pervasive, whether this predator has had other victims. That's the kind of discovery that's necessary, and every lawyer in America will want those facts. Historically, employees have been less likely to win in arbitration than in court, and in the cases where they do win, they typically receive a much lower monetary award. Since the results of arbitrations are secret and binding, they have no avenue to appeal and no way to hold repeat offenders accountable. The arbitration process has not only allowed corporations to hide sexual harassment and assault cases in this secretive and often biased process, but it has also shielded those who have committed serious misconduct from the public eye. So there's no accountability, and we know that sunlight is always the best disinfectant. Estimates suggest that more than 60 million Americans and 57.6% of women workers are subject to arbitration clauses, and many don't even know it because the clauses were written in fine print. This victory is for them, for each one of them. By passing this legislation, we are giving these workers a new path to justice. So I want to thank all of my colleagues for working together, for getting something done for American workers. Now I'd like to have Senator Graham.
Thank you very much. Very briefly, Senator Schumer, thank you. I mean, making time on the floor, I appreciate it. Why does it take so long? You have to listen. How do you pass a bill? You start with listening. You listen to the victims, and you have to make up your own mind, is that right or not? So from working with Kirsten, I've heard a lot, I've learned a lot. And business has legitimate concerns, we listen to them, but we acted. What we refuse to do is stop. It is hard. How do you take a real problem and make a good law to solve a bad problem? You listen, and you make changes when appropriate. So I've been a lawyer most of my adult life, and there's a place for arbitration. I don't mind arbitration between businesses. There's a place for arbitration. It's cheaper. You can get it done quicker. But most people have no idea what they're doing when they sign an employment contract. And the idea that you're going to sign away your day in court when you're abused in the workplace, those days are over. No more arbitration in the basement about misconduct up top. This is the biggest change in the workplace since social. We have laws on the books protecting the American worker from injury at the workplace. I grew up in a small town in South Carolina. We owned a bar called the Sanitary Cafe. Most of our customers were mill workers that worked in the textile plant. I can remember so many of them missing a finger or a thumb because the equipment back then was pretty dangerous. I'm a limited government Republican, but there's a place for the government when it comes to our daily lives. So to all the women and men, but mostly women, you're going to have a right today that you did not have yesterday. You're going to have a chance to be heard differently, and is long overdue. So what will happen in the business community? They will up their game. I can tell you the ripple effect from OSHA is that people now are taking seriously preventing injury in the workplace. Well, one of the injuries in the workplace is related to sexual assault and harassment that maybe is not as visible as losing a finger. So the day of being quiet and doing it where nobody understands what happened and the woman next door doesn't know that the same guy that's doing it to her also did it to the lady down the hall, those days are over. And I want to tell the American people, it's pretty screwed up here at time, but there's some hope. As long as we listen to each other and try to make life better where we can find common ground, there's hope. So, Christian, I'll just say this. You are the most tenacious person I've ever met in all the right ways.
Thank you. Thank you, Lindsey. Our next speaker is Senator Durbin.
I spoke already.
Oh, all right, thank you.
I can
Listen,
speak again.
let me second the comments of Senator Graham about Senator Gillibrand. She is a tiger when she latches onto an issue, and she has been our leader on this issue, and congratulations to you and to your partner in this, Senator Graham. Lindsey, your involvement in this, personally and politically, made the difference. It really did. A unanimous vote in the Senate Judiciary Committee is an indication of a very divided committee coming together on time and issues time has come. And I want to thank Senator Grassley, because this is not the only time that we considered this issue of sexual harassment. You may remember what I consider to be an historic meeting in our committee of the Olympic athletes, Simone Biles and others, who had been exploited in horrible, unthinkable ways, and so many like them. The whole conversation in America has changed on the issue of sexual harassment, and it's changed in the right way. We are moving toward the day when it is totally unacceptable in America to consider the possibility or to even dream that you're going to escape responsibility. We are now talking about taking arbitration clauses that silenced and concealed what had happened and making those a thing of the past, as they should be. Gretchen, Carlson, thank you for being here, and thank you for coming to the Judiciary Committee hearing. And one last person I want to acknowledge is the House lead sponsor, just happens to be Sherry Bustos of Illinois, who has been in touch with me almost on a weekly basis. She sent me an email last night and said this is the #1 issue that I've been able to achieve in the House of Representatives, and she should be proud of her accomplishment on that side of the rotunda as well. There's more work to be done, but this is groundbreaking and history-making, and I'm glad to be a part of it. And I think Senator Grassley's next up. Senator.
Well, we listened to a lot of horrific and awful stories about sexual assault, and probably even adding to that awful experience that they go through that seems like nobody cares. Or with the cover-up, I shouldn't say cover-up, the secrecy or the lack of public knowledge about what goes on in an arbitration. Be able to choose yourself. Do you want arbitration or do you want court? That seems to be a reasonable thing to do. And in court, you'll have your day in court. And the justice branch of our government is obviously where we're going to make sure that people get a fair hearing. And things that are made public so they don't happen again are very important. And so I'm glad to be a part of this, follow leaders like Gillibrand and Durbin and Graham and Schumer on this. But really, this is a good day for our political system too, because in a bipartisan way, this issue is bipartisan, but it shows that Congress can work in a bipartisan way. So I thank everybody, particularly the people that were brave enough to bring this out and help us get this legislation passed. Because without a public outcry, sometimes Congress doesn't act. That's not the way it should always be, but that's sometimes the way it is. So you've helped move the political process along. Thank you, Senator Schumer, for the bipartisanship.
Thank you, Senator Grassley. Our next speaker is Gretchen Carlson. Please come on up.
Well, hi, everyone. Today I'm here on behalf of the millions of American workers who have been silenced for doing nothing wrong. Workers who simply wanted to go to their jobs every day and work in a safe environment. Workers who had the courage to come forward to say something was wrong and in return got shunted into a secret chamber most of them never heard from ever again. This is a historic day, not only for workers, but for our country. Both of our parties coming together to say enough is enough. Heartfelt gratitude to Majority Leader Schumer, Senators Gillibrand, Graham for their leadership on this, Senators Durbin and Grassley for crossing the aisle, and so many others. I could never have imagined 5 years ago, after filing my harassment lawsuit against Fox News Chairman and CEO Roger Ailes, that I'd be standing here today with such an amazing bipartisan victory. A dear friend of mine said to me back then, "You know, Gretchen, something good is going to come out of this." I didn't really see it that way at the time, but it turns out she was right. A lot of good has come from my decision to come forward and speak for the millions of others who couldn't. A lot of good has come forward from walking the halls of Congress for the last 5 years, working with both parties. A lot of good will come from this bill, which is change. The bill will allow survivors a choice: secret arbitration or the public courts. And I believe this bill will also have a dual effect. It's going to help companies get on the right side of history, that's for sure, but it will also stop the bad behavior, because now the bad actors will know that women's voices will be heard when they speak up about what's really happening at work. So today, 5 years in the rearview mirror, I'm incredibly bullish on the road ahead for a movement that I inadvertently helped to create. Because the stakes couldn't be higher. Marching in the streets can inspire us. Editorials can open our minds. Hashtags can galvanize. But legislation is the only thing that lasts. On behalf of all American workers, thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I just want to say, in general, this is a bipartisan bill, as everyone has mentioned, and we now have a series of bipartisan bills moving forward. I filed cloture on the postal bill, which is bipartisan. We introduced VAWA today. A bunch of people, Senator Durbin and others, introduced VAWA today, which is bipartisan. The CR is bipartisan. So we've always said, as a Democratic majority, whenever we can work in a bipartisan way, we want to, and today and next week will be a strong indication of that. Okay? Thank you. Done?
Any questions?
This subject.
Only on topic, yes.
I have a question for Senators Graham and Grassley. Do you see this bill as the beginning of maybe further reforms to arbitration?
No, I'm open-minded about where arbitration is being abused. And again, arbitration has its place in the American legal system. It's just got to be balanced. You can't have the company picking the arbitrator. So there's some reforms in the Arbitration Act need to be made to make it more balanced and a better product. So yeah, I'll continue to listen, and if I can find common ground, we'll act.
Can I ask Mr. Carlson a similar question? You referred to this as a movement and that there's more work to do. Legislatively, what's next? What else can Congress do to advance this movement?
Well, I think I'll be having a lot of meetings moving forward. I know that Senator Gillibrand wants to continue to work on this. We just heard that Senator Graham is willing to work on this. I know members of the House as well. I'd like to take on non-disclosure agreements and further explore where we can move with arbitration for other disenfranchised groups.
Can I follow up just real quick with non-disclosure agreements? Can you just explain why was the time to do that now? Why that wasn't part of this bill?
Because we wanted to get the first bite of the apple with what we could get done strategically with both parties, and it's been a 5-year journey.
Yeah,
It's rare you can get a UC on the floor of the Senate on something so significant.
And just to clarify, this is such an important step because this is where we had enormous insight into the abuses. And just as Senator Graham said, we'll continue to fight for other abuses, but this was unique in that Gretchen's story not only did it become an unbelievable film, but it was in the public's consciousness. And so when so many people have been so aggrieved for so long, that's what comes to our attention first, and that's why this first bill was so important.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.